Hey guys, welcome to week 12. Hey, this week we get to do something that I love to look at, and that's the decade of the 1950s. This is a decade of great change, of great tension, and it is an era, or rather a decade, that is in many respects sort of misunderstood. This is the decade that if you've heard parents or grandparents say, if we could just go back to the good old days, right, life would be better. That the morals, the values of the good old days, if instilled today, would solve many of the problems that we face. And this is the decade that they're speaking about. And the reality is that the 1950s, as unique as they were just that. They were unique. Okay, the good old days that many people harken back to are not really something that the United States ever experienced, except for during the 1950s. And much of what we think about the 1950s wasn't actually experienced by a broad spectrum of society. In fact, what we think about with respect to the good old days of the 1950s is we're talking about white society. And by white, I mean WASP. White Anglo-Saxon Protestant society. African Americans, Mexican Americans, Asian Americans, other minority groups did not necessarily experience the 1950s in the same way that other people did. And we're going to have an opportunity to sort of take a look at that. So this week, when we talk about the emergence of youth culture, when we talk about the development of rock and roll music, even though African Americans are really important to rock and roll, we're going to see that there's some tensions there as well. And so there's a lecture that you have to listen to, some reading that you need to read through, and a film that you'll want to watch. And we're going to be dealing with the economy and the way that the economy boomed at this time. And this is actually pretty important because when we get to the hippies or the counterculture of the 1960s, it's important to understand the context of the 1950s and the economy that these people were born into, what we call the baby boomer generation, because they revolt, and they're going to revolt against something quite important in the 1960s. Okay, we'll also look at the predecessors to the hippies, known as the beatniks, what some would call the rebels without a cause. Okay, so an interesting decade the 1950s is. I've got some films for you to watch, some music for you to listen to, obviously some things to read as well. But just dive in, and then of course you have your discussion board that you need to address, and be sure to look at the date for when that's due. Off the top of my head, I don't exactly remember when that was, but it should be listed there on the discussion board for you. So get all that up by 11:59 p.m. like you guys normally do. You're pretty good at that. The only other thing I have for you this week is to encourage you just to continue to work or to begin work on your final papers. Again, I know that it seems like that's going to be so far away down the road, but time goes quickly when you're having fun, right? Which hopefully you are. But just start working on those, and you know, the sooner the better, because if you run into questions or need help in some way, then I'm able to do that now. Aside from that, I think that's all I have for you. So, as I always do, go in peace, be warm and filled, and may the force be with you. Be blessed, guys.